Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart, the podcast where we dive deep into the folds of mental health, embracing the challenges, the victories, and everything in between. I'm your host, MommaFoxFire, and today we are covering a topic that is close to the heart of many of our listeners, including myself, and that is parenting kids and the intricate dance of mental health in those precious moments. Parenting is a journey full of joy, chaos, laughter, and sometimes, a Taco Tuesday that just seems to fall apart completely. For this conversation, I was joined by the incredible Emily Martin, and together we talked through some of the complexities of raising kids, navigating through the ups and downs, and finding that delicate balance in supporting kids' mental health. Before we jump in, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge something essential. Parenting is no cakewalk. I have my own stories, and I'm sure you've heard many of them already. You're going to hear some more today as well. It's an incredible journey that comes with its own set of challenges. So whether you are a seasoned parent or just starting to navigate the exciting but challenging realms of parenting, know that you are not alone, and we are all in this together. In today's episode, Emily shares her insights, experiences, and a peek into the innovative world of FriendTales, a project that's close to her heart. We talk about the unique challenges kids face during the pandemic, the impact of divorce on young minds, and how we as parents can be a pillar of support while treading the delicate path of mental health with our children. So grab your favorite beverage, find a comfy spot, and join us in this enriching conversation. It's time to explore the intricate tapestry of kids, parenting, and mental health.
Oh, you know what? See, dang it. I always forget at least one thing. And I'm glad it's usually web captioner, because it is something that I notice like right away that I have forgotten. At least it's that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I'm super glad to have you here today and really excited for our topic tonight. Really excited to have our guest on tonight. This is Emily Martin of FriendTales, and we're going to be talking about kids, parenting, and mental health, which, as you guys know, is something that I talk about all the time anyway. So this is really going to be a good conversation. A little bit about Emily. Emily lives in the ad world, but on the side strongly believes in the impact of mental health. She and her co-founder started FriendTales, a mental health startup focused around helping kids understand their feelings better. She grew up supported by her friends and mental health always in flux, and she eventually joined too. She suffers from anxiety and panic attacks, but overcomes with preparation and confidence. And I have a couple of websites for you. I've got Twitter, Instagram, and your website here. I'm going to pop those into chat. But thank you so much just for agreeing to come on here and join me today. I'm excited for this.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited as well.
Absolutely. So if you guys have any questions for our guest, I'm going to open up a question queue. Give me just a second to do that, and type an exclamation point Q, pop it in there, and then hit enter on your keyboard, and it'll put the question into a queue, and we'll get it picked up and taken care of. So with that, I think we're just going to kind of jump right in here. And can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences and what you do as your day job? You said you're in kind of the ad space. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I work in advertising. So I spend my day trying to influence consumers to purchase products, which is very interesting in the mental health space as well, just because I feel like there are certain biases that everyone has. Everyone has a different cognition and the way that they think about things. So I actually work on the strategy side. So I think about, who are our consumers, who we target, what are their thoughts, beliefs, and needs. And that kind of helped me understand overall people's mental states better a little bit, and how they view things, and how there's different types of mindsets that we have to kind of address. So it is really interesting to work in the ad world. I feel like it was definitely a big trip during COVID, just because a lot of the ads kind of shut down or were filtered now. But even living on social media, I feel like the ads were everywhere. You cannot avoid an ad. It's really hard to feel like you can truly be just surfing the internet without getting plastered with everything. So we try to make sure that we do kind of ethical ad placements, and we're not like bombarding people 100% of the time. But that is my day job, so.
Well, I appreciate the non-bombarding, because sometimes you go to a website and it's just like you can't even get to the content because the ads are in the way, which is so frustrating. I work in adjacent, but I work in the marketing department. I work on proposals for architecture engineering services. So it's kind of services marketing, which is a little bit different than things you get with ad revenue. But yeah, it's neat to kind of view it from the customer's perspective. And I think with ads, especially, it's one of those things that you got to think about what's going into them, for sure. And the placement of it, I think, is really important as well.
Well, that's the messaging too is really important as well, just because to resonate with whatever they're going through at that moment. Mm-hmm. And so you have to get into their shoes basically and be like, okay, I'm this person. I need this. This is why I'm telling you you need this.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So Bite put a question into the question queue. She asks, what is your favorite poem?
Oh, okay. Can it be a book of poems?
Absolutely.
Okay. My grandpa, when I was very young and every time I was sick, he would always read me Hailstones and Halabic Bones, which is a series of poems that depict different colors through words and visuals. But it's overall just a nice reflective poem. Like each poem goes through pink and then red, and then it shows you all these different things that represent those colors. Like a river is blue and a forest is green, and there's a whole poem on each color. It was one of my favorite things when I was younger because it helped me calm down from being so sick and then eventually go to sleep, because my grandpa most likely fell asleep with me while he was reading it.
Oh, that's great. So Hailstones and Halibut Bones. I'm looking this up on, by Mary O'Neill. Okay. So I'm looking this up on Goodreads so I can pop a link in here. Let's see. Oh, Pants, you're saying poems are gay. Listen, my friend, I hope by that you mean that they're happy and lovely and wonderful. And if that's not what you mean, I invite you to consider your choices that you're putting into the chat and bring your authentic self and not be a jerk. Because it's the only rule here is don't be a jerk. But if you're meaning gay in a great way, then awesome. Poems are fantastic. Well, I love that you tie kind of your favorite book of poems to a childhood experience. I think that that's a really neat thing to be able to do, to say I read this as a kid, or I was read this as a kid, and it's got all these good memories for me. And it sounds like it was really impactful on you. That's really cool. Bite, thank you as always for that question. It's such a good one. Is there anything you love about working in the ad space and anything that you hate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love that I'm influencing consumers sometimes for doing things that maybe they don't need. That's kind of not the best part. But I would say some of the best parts is that I do work, some of my brands are in pharmaceutical space and rare diseases. And these are patients that have been untouched, have never had any kind of treatment. And seeing them and seeing their reactions to when the treatment comes out is so heartwarming, because they're
That's
this
cool.
is finally something that I can use that will help my, disease state get better. And you kind of get to see their impact through all these patient stories. And so I feel that piece of impacting someone's life is the most amazing thing. Yeah.
That is really cool. I mean, just to be able to say this is something that actually makes a real difference in someone's life immediately is a really neat thing. Is there anything you don't like about working in the ad space?
The long hours aren't great, but yeah. And I feel I live in New York City, for anyone, and the work hard, play hard mentality is definitely there, where you put in 12 hours, 15-hour days, but then you always want to get a drink with your coworkers or have a good time afterwards. So that's maybe probably the worst part is the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Definitely hinders your ability to think 100%.
I feel you on that for sure. So what do you enjoy when you are not working?
Yeah, I'm actually a really big movie person. I love watching stories, and I will kind of get into my startup, but I love storytelling, and kind of what that can kind of lead to. And so I always get gripped in stories super easily, and movies are usually the best way for me to do it. I like sit back or relax, and I kind of get immersed in whatever story is being told. If there's any movie recommendations, definitely comment them and I'll watch them 100%.
What kinds of movies do you like? What are you? I've got a lot of movies that I watch and shows that I watch, so I got to narrow it down.
Oh, honestly, anything. Like anything
Mhm.
from like sci-fi to like adventure. I'm sure everyone watched the Squid Game thus far,
Oh
right?
my
Like that
gosh.
seems like
Yes.
that was so good.
Oh.
Anything. Honestly, anything. Except for horror. Like massive gory horror. I saw a few saws. That's a little too much for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't watch it alone, put it that way.
Well, I just started today. So the third season of the show You came out. I just started watching that today, and I had forgotten how good that show is.
Oh yeah, I'm also watching it. I just started it as well.
Yeah,
I'll let you
yeah.
know when I finish.
Okay, so because that's one of those ones that I think the very first couple of episodes, I was like, I don't know, but the music was good in it. And so I was like, I'm going to power through one more episode. And by the third episode, I was just like, whoa, okay, hang on. I gotta keep watching this. And it's been fantastic. Bite says there's an indie movie that came out in 2009 called Ink. I haven't watched Ink in so long. I love it and recommend it for everyone. I second that recommendation. Ink from 2009 is an excellent, excellent movie. Fantastic. It's been a really long time since I saw that movie.
Good.
Do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
I do. Well, actually, serial killers, no.
Mhm.
For some reason, my camera stopped, but I'm going to
That's
power
okay.
through this. Okay. Okay.
You can restart it if you want to. But also, we can work however we need to here.
We'll restart in a second. I'm sorry, everyone.
No, you're totally fine.
Watching.
Listen, if people aren't familiar with me already and my tech issues, they will be very soon. It's not a problem. I promise you. A camera stopping is not the worst we've had here.
Okay. You still hear me? You can still
Yes,
hear me.
can still hear you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's turn off the camera and turn it back on and see if that does it. Hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I can still hear you.
While we're going through serial killers or true crime stories, honestly, I am always fascinated by serial killers. Not any particular one, only for how I want to know what kind of parenting low-key shaped a serial killer.
Yeah.
Or like what they lacked that would inspire them to harm others.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there is something there in the human psyche that if you really got down to it, maybe it would be some kind of uncovering of what the mind, where it can go if lacking certain elements in your own body or your being. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so a lot of the serial killer stories that I'm familiar with are childhood trauma based. That's kind of what spurred it. But then there are also the people who are true psychopaths, and it's like those people have a brain issue going on. But people who didn't start off that way, people who didn't start off with that kind of personality disorder, it's one of those things like, okay, their mom treated them this way, their mom wished that she had a girl, and so they treated this boy like they were a girl, and it caused issues because they didn't feel that way on the inside. Like there's that gender misalignment, and or head trauma is another big one.
Yeah.
They had some sort of fallen off the swing major head trauma when they were a kid, and it impacted their brain, right? It's kind of that thing that it just messes them up a little bit and allows them to dissociate a little bit from what they're doing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. There is a really good BuzzFeed videos that are called Unsolved. Ever seen them? They're like all the unsolved video or like stories of like different killers and whatnot. So interesting to watch.
Yeah. Was it last week that came up also? Just recently we were talking about BuzzFeed Unsolved, but I don't remember who I was talking to about that. Oh man, that's going to bother me, but that's okay. My brain is like a sieve and sometimes it'll come back to me at the most random moments, but that's okay. Yeah. Yes. That BuzzFeed Unsolved is something.
Comedy horror.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, I listen to the My Favorite Murder podcast, and it is a comedy serial killer podcast. And you don't think of those two going together, but it's like you have to find the things in the story that kind of bring us together in yes, we can laugh at this horrible thing that happened, and we can also empathize with the victims and even sometimes with the backstory of the serial killers themselves. And it's just one of those things that the psychology behind all of it is really fascinating to me, at least.
Okay.
All right. So our topic tonight is kids and parenting and mental health. And you have this fantastic website. I'm going to post the link again. But tell us a little bit about FriendTales. What is it?
So FriendTales was created actually before the pandemic started. It was created in 2018. My business partner, one night we work on a startup on the side of our day jobs. And we were coming together, and I just broke up with my boyfriend at the time. He also just broke up with his girlfriend. We were all both crying on the phone. We were like,
Aww.
We wish we had more people to go to when we were younger. And so being fairly young, we were like, okay, why don't people go to the people they have around them? And we realized that with social media and all this stigma about you have to feel like you're well 100% of the time, you have to look like you're well, you can't like break down in terror at all, or just like break down, period. We created FriendTales. So we created this thing called Characters with Feels. They're like characters that embody different mental health states. So think of like depression, anxiety, we have addiction, we have OCD, and then we have self-esteem. And each one of these characters are kind of like inside out, like the inside out characters that kind of embody like happiness, sadness, things like that. But they're supposed to be more like older kids, for older kids. So they're going to come to life in 2 different ways, which we're very excited about. And we're just about to launch our first comic book. So they're going to come in comic book form. So they're these short reads that kind of go through different moments of your life that you can kind of read about if you are resonating with a certain character. So even if you're not diagnosed with like depression or anxiety or anything, but you resonate with the character, it's kind of telling, what's happening to you beforehand. So before actual diagnosis. And so we have the characters in the comic books. Then we also have a chat bot that we're working on as well in the back end. It's still in beta. It's like still a little rough overall, but we're trying to make it so if you don't want to go to anyone, you at least go to this chat bot and you tell it all of its feelings. Like you just like vent 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Just to feel like you aren't being stigmatized, or it's kind of an anonymous person that will just like reaffirm you and give you a lot of empathy that you need. So yeah.
That's really cool. And even if you haven't received an official diagnosis, you can still have a feeling of being depressed. Like that's still a feeling that you feel, whether you are diagnosed with major depressive disorder like I am, or you have another kind of, maybe you have general anxiety disorder. There's all of these specific diagnoses that you can have, but also even if you don't have general anxiety disorder, you can still have anxiety. It's still a feeling you can go through. It's still something you can experience. And I think a lot of people get really twisted around, well, are you officially diagnosed? It's like, no, but I'm still feeling depressed today. You don't have to have a diagnosis to feel a certain way. So I like that you kind of put it in the context of this is not tied to what are you diagnosed with. I think that that's really important, and something that kids especially, because they're very reliant on parents to take them to a therapist to even get a diagnosis. Like a school counselor isn't going to be able to give that diagnosis. So they don't have the means to necessarily get that diagnosis for themselves. So it's important to be able to address those feelings without having to tie it to that diagnosis. It's really neat. That's a really neat concept. And I love the chatbot idea as well.
Yeah. Hopefully we're trying to start in middle school. So like super early on, like 6th grade. But the idea is that it grows up with you up until high school or college. So we're going to keep posting the comic books as if time is moving. And so we're going to hopefully get to the point where it gets so long that you can just like follow it when you're a kid and then you grow up with it. And then hopefully you'll be a little bit better off in your mindset for sure.
Yeah, that's really neat. And the comic book part of that is very engaging as well. I know whenever I give even my 7-year-old, when I give him a graphic novel versus, just a book to read, he'll read it multiple times over instead of, once or twice. He'll sit there and like go back and look at a picture on 3 pages back. And it's neat. That's a neat way to do it.
Yeah. And one more fun fact about it is that the artists we're taking to illustrate it actually have the mental disorders that we're trying to depict. So we're being very curated in who depicts these and what they actually felt. And they kind of put themselves into the characters, which is really sweet to see because they're like, this is basically me. Like, oh my gosh.
Do you have multiple authors and illustrators working from so one person can experience anxiety in one way and one person can experience it in another way? Do you have multiple people with the same kind of diagnosis going at it from multiple angles, or is it pretty much one author and illustrator per?
It's one right now. I mean, we're only a startup, so we only have like 7 people on staff. Sure. But
right.
Hopefully one day we can go through every single angle and like kind of expand too. And I anticipate, with some things that we can kind of tell it through the journey itself. Maybe not have an individual character for each one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's really cool. You said you started this before the pandemic, so kind of ignoring the pandemic piece, that part of it, taking that out. Do you feel that kids today are facing different mental health challenges than in the past, or do you think these have always been there and we just never talked about them?
I think definitely, I mean, I don't know about you as a mom, but staying home, being around your parent that much definitely had I feel like an impact on the family gathering aspect of everything and like having your own personal space and allowing yourself to kind of explore who you are outside of your home. Because you can be a very different person in school than you are at the home life. So I think that kind of is interesting in the way that it went. And so even if you go to I feel like even like the versus private school versus public school or like other things can craft who you are and give you kind of who your identity. And being a kid at such a young age and not really having any place where you feel like you belong, I feel like that's an important piece, is to figure that out while you're in school. So
yeah. And if you don't have these challenges as something that's visible, that's really hard to connect to, because like you were saying earlier with social media, everything is picture perfect. Everyone's presenting their little perfect lives, and it's hard to say, if you're consuming that much social media, how much of it is real and how much of it do you connect to versus how much of it makes you feel bad about yourself, which is unfortunate to me.
The comparison is definitely the hardest part, I think, is that you follow all these influencers and all these people that you aspire to be, then realistically you feel like you're less than because of it. And so it's just like that stigma, I feel like. Yeah.
Absolutely. How does FriendTales go about helping kids understand their feelings better?
Yeah, definitely. So the comic books are structured and they're run by like clinical psychologists and like therapists and other people, just to vet the stories to make sure that we're depicting the comic books correctly and like the mental health disorders correctly. But it's supposed to help you understand your feelings better because you're supposed to resonate with the character. The goal of the comic books is really to be like, oh, I see myself in this moment. So we have one named Simon. He is our depression character. He is inspired by my co-founder. He doesn't want to get out of bed for a few weeks, kind of thing, like always down, like feels really sad and doesn't, he just doesn't want to socialize anymore. It's very out of character for him. And so if that feels like you, then it might be a signal to like, okay, maybe I should talk to Simon. Maybe I should ask him, like, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And so that's why we made the chatbot, because we wanted an interactive part to feel like, yeah, you can resonate with this character, but now what? Like, what can you do with that? So we wanted to make the chatbot allow you to kind of let all that out and kind of talk through whatever you are feeling and whatever you resonated with Simon about in that way.
That's really neat. And so that you go in and you talk to this chatbot and you kind of get it all out. And then does this chatbot, what does it do in response to that?
Kind of tells, it says like, hey, how's it going? And then you're like, oh, I'm feeling sad, or whatever you want to say. And it will kind of direct you like, oh, why are you feeling sad? And they're like, X, Y, and Z, whatever it is.
Just help you talk it out a little bit.
It'll let you talk it out slowly. And so we worked with the clinical psychologist and the therapist to like, what are some follow-up questions to kind of understand why you feel this way, maybe what's triggering you to feel this way. It's not supposed to replace therapy. I'm going to say that
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
It's supposed to just be a friend, like almost like a pen pal that you can have
I like that.
when moments you need it most. So yeah, or an imaginary character, we also say. So.
Yeah. And like I said, kids are very reliant on their parents to get them to these appointments, right? It's not like there's a therapist on every corner, and my kids can't just walk around like, we got one of their therapists is in Arlington, and it's 20 minutes away. So by car on a highway. So it's not like they could ever just walk there or anything. And so it's one of those things that it's important to have that stopgap where it's like, yeah, you need to seek this mental health help and really kind of get professional support. But in addition to your school counselor who's on your campus, you need a friend at home too. And so I think that that's a really neat thing to have available.
There is one element of the comic books that I actually haven't mentioned yet. I don't know why I haven't. Is that there's some kind of magical element, like playing off of the Disney kind of ambiance. Character has kind of element of something that helps them kind of shake their feelings. So Anna, she's our anxiety character. She has a mood ring that will kind of tell her moments when she feels like she's having a panic attack. And so in that moment, she knows, because someone told her in the story, what to do when she has a panic attack. So she wears this ring always to kind of help her understand her feelings and exactly what's happening. So we have one of those kind of magical elements throughout all of the stories, just to help them kind of have a physical thing besides their phone that they can go to that kind of gets through their feelings.
That's really neat too. Joey, Gabe, thank you so much for that sub. If you're just arriving here in chat tonight, our topic is parenting kids and mental health. So if you have any questions related to that topic, feel free to pop them into the chat. But I appreciate your support. Thanks for being here. Is there a piece of advice that you would give to any parent related to kids and mental health based on all of your experience putting this stuff together and talking to all these different people and getting all of this going? Is there anything that's come up?
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid who went through a pretty nasty divorce when I was younger, and definitely like shook me a little bit. And my dad was really pushing me to go to therapy. And I was like, no, I don't need therapy. I don't need therapy. I'm fine. Like, whatever. I'm just going to power through it, whatever it was. Looking back now as an adult, I definitely should have gone to therapy. And I feel like if you can initiate that with your child and give them an outlet where they can like really talk through at whatever they're feeling at the moment, that is so healthy for everyone, just to give them a little bit of a better mental well-being and help them kind of feel like they're supported in other outlets. So like, even if they don't want your support as a parent, which I didn't at that time, and my sister was like, you're fine, whatever, I probably should have gone to a therapist to kind of like really speak through that. So push for therapy if you can find it, for sure.
Absolutely. That's one of the things. So my older child is in therapy, and just a couple of days ago, actually, my 7-year-old said, Mom, do I have a therapist? And I said, well, no, baby, you don't have a therapist right now. You've got your neurologist. He has Tourette's. And so you've got your neurologist that you see, but you don't really have a therapist. And I said, do you feel like you want to talk to somebody? Would you like to have a therapist? Like, is that something you want to do? And they said, no, I was just wondering. And I was like, okay, well, if you ever want, so I had that moment to kind of say like, hey, if you ever decide you want one, you just let me know. So I think it's really important to listen to your kids because they'll tell you that they want to talk if you're willing to listen. Even my 14-year-old who is very reserved, I guess, or just doesn't, you have to really pull things out of them to get them to talk. Like it's a struggle sometimes. But even they were willing to tell me, hey, I think I want to talk to a therapist. Hey, I think this is something that I want to do. And so you got to listen and you got to take them seriously when they say stuff like that, because while my 7-year-old doesn't necessarily have something that he needs to talk to a therapist about, if I had just said, you don't need to talk to a therapist, like that shuts it down, like right then and there. So I agree with that. Absolutely. Listen to your kids. If they're telling you they want to talk to somebody, get the school counselor involved too, because they need that third party person who's not mom or dad to talk to sometimes.
Definitely. I'm curious to see, did you see a shift in kind of parenting and their mental health while they were at home during the pandemic?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the shift in their mental health. So my 7-year-old, I think he had a really difficult time adjusting because also it was right. Like, so I filed for divorce 6 months before the pandemic hit and kicked my ex out like 3 months before the pandemic hit. And so, but we had been living essentially separately for 6 months to a year before that, but just in the same house. And so not only was there pandemic, but there was also divorce and separation going on at the same time. And I think that it kind of compounded that for at least my 7-year-old, because he not only was kind of having the separation of parents, but at the same time he had, okay, well, now he's not in front of his teacher. Now he's not with his friends. And on the one hand, he struggled a lot with a little bit of the social isolation issues. But on the other hand, his Tourette's was just kicking up really hard at the time as well. And so I think it helped him hide a little bit from the scrutiny of some of his peers, because first grade is so hard on kids. If you have something that is different about you, it is so difficult. But it gave him time to really adjust to it. So I think there was good and bad for my 7-year-old. For my 14-year-old, it was just that immediate like drop off of that friend interaction. And thank God for Discord, because they were able to keep up with all of their friends on well, not all of their friends who had Discord and everything. So friend groups online. And it's been more of an adjustment going back to school for them this year. So yeah, there were definitely significant challenges during the pandemic for both of them, and they're 7 years apart. So it's like two different sets of issues instead of having the same sets of issues. But yeah, it wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
But it's also hard for me to say like how much of that was the pandemic versus how much of that was divorce and separation, because they were just happening at the same time. So
that's fair. I feel like coming back to society now, like relearn, like going back to school, basically like your kids are, because small talk, I can't do it anymore. Like, I don't know how to like have a casual conversation and like whatever else. I'm just like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, we just a couple weeks ago, everyone has gotten vaccinated who's on my team, and we decided, we're going to go have lunch, just kind of casual thing. And so for the first time since March of 2020, I saw a lot of my coworkers, and it was just like, this is weird.
So weird.
Because we're not all back in the office. We're also working from home. Our office isn't open yet. And so it was just one of those things that it was really an adjustment to be like, I don't remember if you like hugs, or I don't remember anything, it was an adjustment. And so I think for the kids, especially, that adjustment is a struggle. And I mean, if you're high school age, and you're already kind of that awkward middle school, high school age. Like, how much more awkward is it right now?
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, and how much are they going to remember this big moment they think is a big moment? But in hindsight, it's going to be like so small, like just another day. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Does FriendTales support parents or family units, or is it pretty solely focused on kids?
Solely focused on kids right now. We do want to have an element of it that if something happens in the chat and a parent should be notified, the parent would have to kind of sign the kid up, that they will receive any kind of notification of like, hey, you should check on your kid, or like, hey, they seem a little down. Like, definitely try to take these like reasonable approaches to getting to talking to them or things like that. Because if they're willing to support enough to, engage with the chatbot, download it on their iPad or whatever device they have, then hopefully that's enough to be like, yeah, tell me if something is happening. So we do want to have that signal there to allow parents to have visibility. But of course, yeah.
Yeah. So whenever you've gone through all this process and this development, has there anything you have found that a parent could do to best support their kids' mental health?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like just being open, like telling your kid, tell me anything. I'd rather you tell me than you not tell me. I feel like is such an opportunity for kids, even if they're shameful of it, like tail between their legs, if like, Dad, sorry. I smashed the car one time when I was in like 16, and I was like, Dad, I'm so sorry, but I accidentally got into a fender bender. He's like, are you okay? Like, he was like not mad. He wasn't anything. He was just like, always come to me whenever and be and like I'm open to it, whatever's happening. I just want to make sure you're okay. And yeah, just tell me. And so I feel like that openness definitely needs to be there to help a kid's mental health feel like they can go to you in like dire situations, or what they consider dire situations.
Right. Yeah, that's big, and that's so true. And I had a very similar experience. I was probably a little older. I was probably about 18, and it was not my fault, but I totaled my car at the time, and I immediately called my dad. And the first thing I said was, I'm okay, but my car is not. Because I knew what was important to him, because growing up with him, like, he had made it very clear what was important to him. And my mom too, like, they were both very much on the same page. They want us to be okay. And so I led with like, I'm okay, but my car is not. And so I think that's really something that if you have an experience like that, yeah, your parent wants to know that you're okay. Like, that's what at least I really care about as a parent is, are you okay first and foremost? Everything else is like second. I don't like car, whatever it is. It just doesn't even matter as long as you're okay. And if you're not okay, I want to know about it before anything else. Like, that's what I want to know about beforehand. So I think that is, and it goes back to listening, right? It goes back to listening to your kids and being open with your kids and making sure that your kids know that you're going to listen as well. So
definitely. And that you're willing to. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about the shameful part of it, because even if they are feeling bad about something, you still want them to talk to you about it. You don't want them to hide things from you. I hid stuff from my parents. I grew up, our household was not like overly strict, but it was a very, very Christian church heavy, like sex was we didn't talk about that. Like, that's not something so I hid a lot of that kind of stuff, and I'm trying to be more open about it with my kids. It's a struggle, even just because of the way that I was raised, but it's hard. It is hard to stay open and as a parent reserve a little bit of, okay, your own feelings. You have to manage your own feelings, and hopefully you have equipped yourself to do that as a full-grown adult with children.
My belief in parenting is that you are always somewhat a better version of your parenting in your past because you've self-corrected whatever your parents did wrong. No offense, sorry parents. But
We all do
you
stuff
learned a
wrong.
lot,
All
right?
of us.
You learned about, right? So like even if your parents didn't do it, you can approach it a little differently and give
Mhm.
an opportunity that maybe wasn't there earlier. So
Yeah.
I feel like everyone learned something. So we'll be
Yeah,
okay.
I love that. That's a great way to look at stuff. Like that is a great way to look at it. Not you, Bite. You're perfect. We absolutely know that. Yes, Bite said that's the question in a lot of situations. Are you okay? Because anything else can be dealt with once that's established. 100%. Like if you as my child are okay, that's what matters, and we'll deal with the rest of it however we need to. I've never done anything wrong in my life. Oh boy. I know you, Bite. Have you forgotten? Do you feel parents also have had unique mental health challenges just by virtue of being parents?
Yeah. I mean, like, I cannot imagine, even as a single, I was also raised by a single dad, and you're a single mom. So the amount of mental stamina my dad had to come home, cook dinner, help with homework if there was needed, then finally get the point at like 10 p.m. to relax for like an hour before he passed out. Cannot imagine doing that day in and day out. The commitment of that is phenomenal. And I think we should all appreciate parents a little bit more than we do. And this is again a hindsight moment of like, I wish I told them thank you every day just for the fact that I had a roof over my head. I was fine. I could just worry about like petty things in life, like, oh, this guy doesn't like me, or like, oh, I got a really bad grade on a test. But there is so many other things I could have been worrying about that I didn't because I was like sheltered and safe and okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think personally, there are definitely mental health challenges that come with being a parent just because you're raising another human. I mean, you have to have so much more control of yourself so you don't screw up your kids. Like you're raising human beings to be functioning adults eventually, and you have to have you have to be so on top of your own shit that it's hard sometimes to just focus on your kids. And definitely I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect parent. My parents weren't perfect. They're great and I love them. Don't get me wrong at all. But no parents are perfect. No human is perfect. And I think that it does take, I like what you said about the mental stamina to just provide and keep providing and keep giving and giving and giving. And it's nice if your kids are also giving in their affection and their love. That's kind of a bonus, but sometimes they don't have it in them, and that's okay. And you got to be okay with that too. So.
For sure. And I feel like giving them the opportunity to opt out of things. Like if you really don't want to go to certain like a movie or whatever, you can just stay home. Like you don't have to go. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I have told my kids, like, you blame anything you want on me. Like, you don't want to go to some party or whatever. Oh, my mom won't let me. I'll back you up 100%. Blame me. I'll be the bad guy so you don't lose any sort of cool points with whatever. Like, absolutely. Yeah, I don't. I mean, with COVID, like, there haven't been any events to decline. But I feel like before that, there were some that it was just kind of, do you really want to go to this? No. Okay. I'll say no then. But it's important.
When you're ready.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Have their different milestones at different points in time. And so I was maybe a little earlier than my sister. And so my dad was not ready when he was like, are you sure you want to have your first sleepover now? And so was like 12 when she had her first sleepover. So yeah.
Yeah. From your experiences developing FriendTales, what have you found others claim to be the quote unquote hardest part of parenting?
I've really talked to about this was just the response to when things happen. There isn't like a guide where you can just like open it and they're like, if they bring up topic 571 about X, Y, and Z, then you say this, like that. So every parent was like, I really just don't know what to say. And so if you can help me say it in a different way, or they can kind of support, and if I say something differently or not physically correct, like they're in help me understand. The hardest thing is what to say.
Yeah.
Words are difficult.
Words are hard. Words are hard for sure. And I think, I think that that's in my experience true, because I've definitely, my 14-year-old has had a lot of changes and just things, especially pronouns wise and name wise and name choice. And like I think we're on our third chosen name. So I've messed up. Like I've totally messed up. And I'm very grateful that they were able to be like, Mom, you kind of hurt my feelings when you said this, because if they weren't willing to say that to me, like I never would have known. And so, but you don't know what to say in those moments, right? There's not some point where someone sits you down when you're pregnant and they go, okay, here are all the things your kids are going to say as they're growing up, and here's what you say right back to them. No one does that. I don't know if anyone knew that, but no one does that. And you can read as many girlfriend's guide to whatever. It doesn't cover enough. It might cover physical. Yeah, it might cover physical aspects, but definitely not. There's not a website. There's not a book. There's not anything that you can go through. But the best thing that I found to kind of prepare yourself is to make sure that your kids know, hey, I recognize what you're hearing. I recognize what you're saying. I need time to process. I'm going to process. And we're going to talk about this again. And then go talk to a friend who's been there before. Like go find someone who's been in a similar situation. Talk to them. Be like, how did you handle it? What did you do right? And what did you do wrong? So I can do the right things and not the wrong things.
I love that, because I don't even know if my parents did that, but I'm sure they did in the background. And that's so smart to like consult others. I guess I would have just wung it, like just winged it. Whatever I said. Well,
and there are a lot of moments where you do have to just wing it, but you also have to correct yourself after if you were wrong. So what is the most impactful thing someone can do to support their own mental health as a parent of a child who is going through something like what FriendTales supports?
What can the parent do to help the child?
What can the parent do to kind of help themselves while the child is helping themselves with FriendTales? It's a convoluted question.
Someone was like, do I always be not overbearing, but do I always try to be there? Is that the best thing? And so I've talked to a few clinical psychologists about this. They were like, always have to seem like you're in the background, but maybe don't always have to ask about it, right? Just be like, hey, if you need me whenever you're ready, X, Y, and Z, that's when you're kind of in the back of their mind, like, okay, I'm here, my mom's here, my dad's here, I can do this. And then if they ever come to the moment when they actually like, okay, yeah, I'm ready. But someone was like, don't let them go. Don't just let them be. That's not enough. You always have to remind them that you're there, because psychologically they can kind of forget, and they just kind of move on, and they're like, oh, no one loves me. And even just saying I love you to your kid can be so impactful in the saying that like, I support you no matter what. And I feel like that is like the easiest thing. It's just like, keep reminding them that you're there.
And that also kind of is important for you, right? Because you can't be, even though you're the parent, and in some cases you are the end all be all, you are not the only end all be all in every situation. And it's important to be able to say like, okay, I'm not the expert here. You're going to talk to the expert, but mom's still going to be here to talk whenever you need to talk. And that kind of gives you that space to say like, I'm recognizing either I don't have the energy, I don't have the focus, I don't have the time, I don't have the expertise, and directing them to something or someone who does is really important to be able to say, like, okay, you're going to give me a little bit of a break by going to this person who has the right answers for you, but also now that weight is off of me a little bit. That's really big.
Yeah. And then in the parent aspect, even though I am not a parent, I would say all of my friends who are parents, their favorite moment is when they have time to themselves. Like, as weird as that is, it's like the feeling of like silence and quiet and like whatever that moment is of just like recollecting what just happened the whole day, or even the whole month or the whole year, and just like reflecting on it. I feel like so critical for a parent just to like decompress.
Oh, definitely. As long as you don't wind up in an anxiety spiral like I do a lot of the time, it's definitely helpful to have that kind of decompression time, and also just the self-care aspect of it. And whether you're alone for self-care or you have, a 7-year-old tagging along with you is one of those things that you can use it as a teaching moment if you've got a little buddy with you. But it's also important to get that alone when you can, for sure. It's one of those, you can't pour from an empty cup kind of things.
Yeah. Very true.
In your bio, you mentioned preparation and confidence, right? So can you walk us through what you do in the face of anxiety and panic attacks personally?
So this came on, I think I had like high functioning anxiety overall, but I also do have generalized anxiety and panic attacks. So it doesn't. Anyways, but what that I learned is that, especially when I was alone during the pandemic, I didn't have a place where I could distract myself. So I had to learn how to deal with it myself. I think that a defining moment for me, because I had to I would walk around, I'd like talk myself up before a presentation. I'd be like, Emily, you are so ready for presentation. You have no idea. I had a panic attack during a presentation once, and it was mortifying.
Oh my gosh.
I was so scared of doing presentations, almost sobbing to the point while I was speaking. And I was like, my coworkers were like, "Are you okay? Like, what's happening?" And I was like, "I'm just having a panic attack." Anyways, it doesn't matter. But during that moment, I was so scared of doing another presentation. And ironically, I saw a TikTok, and this person's like, I use this, and she was a therapist, and she's like, I use this when you're anxious, you're excited, because there's a certain level of like intensity that you have. If you transfer it to a positive energy, it will kind of get rid of your anxiety. So basically now I tell myself I'm like, you're excited. And that's kind of how I prepare myself and give myself confidence, get through whatever I'm going through at the moment.
That's really cool. And I've heard something similar. It's like doing the Superman pose before you go into a presentation, and making sure that you're putting that energy into your body in a positive way, but then also reframing that thinking to say, I'm worried about it. I'm worried about a presentation, because I have a deep fear of like public speaking, believe it or not. And so whenever I have to go and give a speech, like I had to give a speech before the pandemic at UT Arlington. And when I went to do that at this civil engineering conference, I walked into that room and I'm like, I'm sweating. People can see that my face is red. People are going to know that I'm nervous. They're going to know that like all of these things in my head going, this is going to go wrong. 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 I'm going to forget everything. My slides are going to like all of the anxiety pieces of that. And it's one of those things that I kept having to tell myself, once you get there, you're going to be fine. When you get on that stage, you're going to be fine. When you start, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to go great. It's going to be good. I think if I had that, hey, just think about it as you're excited. I'm excited to do this. I'm excited to go talk about this topic. I'm excited to get in front of these kids and talk to them, and hopefully help them make some career decisions. It's like, if you can do that, it's really powerful because it takes your brain out of the spiral, right? It takes you out of that moment of spiraling and into a moment of power, which is a really different way of framing things. But I love that. That's great. And it's neat that you found it on a TikTok. Do you remember who it was?
Saved it, so I'll try to go find it and then I'll send it to you. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was the shortest, smallest thing, but now I prepare. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Does what you have lived through help you relate to others in some way? Have there been any times where your own experiences or background and what you've been through has helped you connect to someone else?
When I had a panic attack during my presentation, I'm quarantined and sitting by myself and like crying afterwards. It's fine. But during that moment, one of my coworkers reached out and was like, "Hey, I know you had a panic attack." I get them to like, "No, you're alone. It's okay. The client will be fine. Like, it's just a presentation. Don't feel like it's the end of the world." Kind of had to re-ground me and feel like my life isn't like spiraling down, like we were saying earlier. Like, it isn't going downwards, but it's just like a blip in a moment.
Yeah.
I think shaking people out of that blip is so important. So for our depression character, we have this thing called Play Life in It. It's basically a playlist of all of his happy moments in his past. Imagine like your favorite hits from your childhood. It will automatically filter through those happy moments to help him shake that feeling of like, oh yeah, there are happier moments in my life. I remember those, and just like kind of, shake them a little bit, you know?
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Like a little snow globe. You just shake them up so you can see them.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like realizing it's a moment is like the hardest part. And realizing it's not like the end or anything is so critical. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you weren't doing what you do now, or if you had chosen a different path in life, what would you be doing instead?
I've actually thought a lot about this recently because I really love what I'm doing right now with FriendTales. I think I would be a therapist. I am an empath naturally. Like, I absorb people's feelings and I can sense them. And that would be really cool to be a therapist that kind of felt what people were feeling and help them reflect on what is happening. So I do it all the time to my coworkers, even though I'm not a therapist. I'll be like, I can sense something's wrong. Like, what is happening with you right now? Like, what are you going through? Is there something else in your outside life? Like, you don't seem like you're totally a tip-top shape, if that makes sense. And so I think I'd be a therapist.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you had any thoughts of potentially pursuing that as a career?
Definitely. I have. I just got to get through the schooling and all that jazz, license and whatnot. So
yeah, it takes a lot. And whenever we have therapists on, we usually have a question that I ask on behalf of Fiona Fears, and it's, what was school like for you? Because at one point she was considering a career in that, and so it's like, what was school like for you, and what's a day in your life like? So if you're interested in finding out what the school is like, you can go back and definitely catch some of those, because we've talked about that pretty extensively, and it's a lot of school and it's a lot of work. But man, every person that I talk to who is a therapist is just like the rewarding feeling that you get of helping someone is unparalleled. So that's great.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we do something on every show that I call the magic moment. And I actually have a little magic wand here. This is our magic wand. So I'm going to wave this magic wand. And with this magic wand, what this magic moment does is you get to pick one thing to eliminate as far as common opinions or misconceptions or theories surrounding mental illness or disabilities or talking about mental health. So once I wave this, you get to just tell us what you would love to eliminate. So here we go. Whee!
It's like the Disney Channel where you like do like a little.
Yes.
Okay. If I could wave one thing, this is like a big question, actually.
It is.
If I could remove one thing, I think it would be the fact that uh, stigma around mental health, and when you say you have it, everyone gives you a look. I'm sorry, kind of thing. Don't want that look anymore. I don't even know if that's a good answer or not, but like I feel like that look is kind of a moment when you reflect on yourself and what you just said to them, and if you went to that level of actually telling them, and you don't want them to kind of not treat you differently, but kind of approach you differently because of it.
Yeah.
I am not any different. I just have some moments when I'm a little bit weaker, and that's pretty much it.
And I love that, because it's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize, that 1 in 2 people in the US at least will face some sort of mental illness in their lives. And that means, to me, this is not like any sort of science behind it, but to me, that means 100% of people are impacted by mental illness across their lifetime. So it's not like it's some really random thing that no one gets and no one, it impacts everyone. And so the fact that we don't talk about it, or that there's a stigma around, oh no, it drives me crazy, because it's like, if it's not you, then it's the person sitting next to you,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think the statistic is like 1 in 5 in the span of a year will be dealing with some sort of mental illness, and across a lifetime, it's 1 in 2. So it's everybody. If you're not directly dealing with a mental illness, someone you know and love is, and you're impacted by it. So I agree. I think that that's a great one. It's a big one. It's a really big one, but it's a great one. Well, with that, we'll just kind of open it up to any remaining questions from the community. And while they're typing those in, I'll just ask you if there's anything additional you want to talk about that we didn't talk about yet, or resources or anything you want to throw out there.
Yeah. FriendTales is coming out with our first 3 comic books, which we're very excited about. Hopefully will be available on our website soon. They're actually in pre-printing right now. I haven't touched them yet. But I'm so community informed when we actually launch them, so everyone can get their hands on them. The first 3 comics that are coming out are depression, anxiety, and happiness. So we do have a happiness, because it is kind of a mental health state overall. We didn't want to only do like the negative ones, I guess. We want to do the positive ones as well. So those are the first 3 that we're launching with, which is very exciting.
That's great. Yeah, it'll be really good to have them in your hands, right? Like that's a big accomplishment.
Questioned if we wanted to do it as an app, and we were like, no, we want to feel it. Like, I feel like
you want it in your hands. Yes.
Yeah, we want a physical copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bite says, thank you so much for being here. This has been really informative, and I look forward to the comics. Yeah, me too, definitely. And I posted the website, Twitter, and Instagram again, if anyone wants to go follow, kind of look for that progress, check out what they've got. Just click on any of those links, and that'll get you there. Okay, chat, we'll give you just a minute. I'm going to disconnect with our guest. And Emily, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it too. Bye, everyone.
All right.
That brings us to the end of another episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. A huge shout out to Emily Martin for joining us and sharing her wisdom on kids parenting and mental health. Before we part ways, I want to leave you with a thought. Parenting, with all its challenges, is a journey that really does require resilience, patience, and a hell of a generous sprinkle of humor. So to all the parents out there, you are doing an amazing job. And remember, it's okay if sometimes your Taco Tuesdays do fall apart. It doesn't make the feast that you are providing for your children and for yourself any less beautiful. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend, a fellow parent, or anyone who might find comfort and inspiration in this discussion. Don't forget to connect with me on social media also. I really love hearing from you. It makes a big difference to me whenever I hear from someone who says, oh my gosh, I love your podcast, or I listened to this week's episode and here's what I took away from it. It makes such a difference to me to just get those encouraging messages. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, all the things. And as I wrap up, let me express my gratitude to you out there listening. Your support means the world to me. So keep your heart open, and until next time, take a moment for yourself, embrace the imperfections, and remember, even when life feels a little bit crummy, you are creating a masterpiece. Thank you for joining me today on Even Tacos Fall Apart. Until next time, be kind, be well, and keep the conversation alive.